A dragon just saved humanity, and you have no idea how. Listen, we've all heard of mythical creatures, but what if I told you that 80% of what you think you know is completely wrong? In the next 9 minutes, I'm going to reveal the true origins of 20 legendary beings that shaped civilizations, and by the end, you'll understand why ancient people genuinely believed these creatures walked among them. No fluff, pure knowledge bombs, starting now. Let's start with the king of all myths, dragons. But here's what nobody tells you. Dragons exist on every continent, in every culture, and they all describe the same thing before global communication existed. Chinese dragons brought rain and wisdom. European dragons hoarded gold and terrorized villages. Mesoamerican dragons were feathered serpents that taught agriculture. Scientists believe our ancestors found massive dinosaur fossils and tried to explain them. Imagine stumbling upon a T-Rex skull in 500 BC with zero context. You'd absolutely think dragons were real. The word dragon comes from the Greek drakon, meaning serpent, and these creatures represented the ultimate test of heroism. Slay the dragon, save the kingdom, prove your worth. Simple formula, infinite stories. Next up, the phoenix, and this one will blow your mind. The phoenix doesn't just rise from ashes for dramatic effect. Ancient Egyptians called it the Bennu, a heron-like bird that represented the sun god Ra. Every 500 years, it would build a nest of cinnamon and myrrh, set itself on fire, and be reborn from its own ashes. But here's the kicker. Modern scientists discovered a real bird behavior called anting, where birds deliberately expose themselves to smoke and fire to kill parasites. Ancient people witnessing birds emerging from fire, looking rejuvenated, probably sparked this legend. The phoenix became Christianity's symbol of resurrection, appearing in medieval bestiaries as proof of life after death. One creature, multiple civilizations, one powerful message. Renewal is always possible. Now let's talk about unicorns, because you've been lied to about these too. Unicorns weren't always sparkly horse friends for children. Medieval Europeans believed unicorns were fierce, untamable beasts whose horns could purify poisoned water and cure diseases. Kings paid fortunes for unicorn horns, which were actually narwhal tusks sold by clever Viking traders. The medical text called a pharmacopoeia from 1741 still listed unicorn horn as legitimate medicine. Marco Polo claimed he saw unicorns in Java, but he was probably describing rhinoceros. The single horn, the healing powers, the rarity, it all made sense to people who desperately wanted magical cures to exist. Unicorns represented purity and power, and only a virgin could tame one according to legend. This symbolism made unicorns powerful religious allegories in Christian art. Let me hit you with the Kraken real quick. This Scandinavian sea monster was described as 1.5 miles wide, capable of dragging entire ships into the abyss. Sailors swore they saw islands that would suddenly sink beneath the waves. The Kraken was real, sort of. Giant squids can grow up to 43 feet long with eyes the size of dinner plates. In 2004, Japanese researchers filmed a living giant squid for the first time. For thousands of years, fishermen encountered these deep-sea behemoths and had no scientific framework to explain them. The Bishop of Bergen wrote about the Kraken in 1752, treating it as absolute fact. Tentacles longer than ship masts, suction cups that could grip anything, a beak that could crack wood. These weren't fantasies. They were exaggerated reports of real encounters with nature's most alien creatures. Griffins are next, and these lion-eagle hybrids guarded gold in the mountains of Scythia according to ancient Greeks. Here's the fascinating part. Griffin legends originated in the same regions where Protoceratops fossils are abundant. These dinosaur skeletons have beaked faces and 4 legs, exactly matching griffin descriptions. Gold miners in ancient Scythia would dig up these bones alongside gold deposits and assume they belonged to guardian beasts. The griffin became a symbol of divine power, combining the king of beasts with the king of birds. You'll find griffins carved into Persian palaces, Roman armor, and medieval coats of arms. One fossil discovery created a mythological empire that lasted 3,000 years. The basilisk, the king of serpents, could kill you with a single glance. Pliny the Elder wrote that the basilisk was a small snake with a white spot on its head resembling a crown.
Its breath wilted plants, shattered stones, and its stare was instant death. Medieval bestiaries claimed only a weasel could kill a basilisk because its smell was toxic to the serpent. This myth probably started with cobras, whose hoods and deadly venom terrified ancient civilizations. The fear became exaggerated through retelling until the basilisks transformed into an 8-legged chicken-snake hybrid in later European folklore. Harry Potter fans know it as the monster in the Chamber of Secrets, but its roots go back to Roman natural history texts. Mermaids appear in every ocean-faring culture, and the reason is darker than Disney showed you. Sailors reported mermaids for centuries, describing beautiful women with fishtails singing near rocks. Christopher Columbus claimed he saw 3 mermaids off the coast of Haiti in 1493. The reality? They were probably manatees. Months at sea, vitamin deficiencies causing hallucinations, desperate loneliness, and the vague silhouette of a manatee created the perfect conditions for mermaid mythology. But mermaids weren't always romantic. In Celtic folklore, mermaids called selkies would drown sailors who tried to capture them. Greek sirens lured men to their deaths with hypnotic songs. Mermaids represented the ocean's beauty and danger in equal measure, a warning that not everything attractive is safe. Werewolves are up next, and lycanthropy was considered a real medical condition for centuries. The transformation from human to wolf during full moons terrified medieval Europe. Werewolf trials happened alongside witch trials, with people genuinely executed for alleged shape-shifting. The myth likely stems from rabies, which causes aggression, foaming at the mouth, fear of water, and nocturnal behavior. Hypertrichosis, a condition causing excessive hair growth, also contributed to werewolf legends. In 1589, Peter Stump was executed in Germany after confessing under torture to being a werewolf who killed and ate 14 children. These weren't just stories. They were explanations for unexplainable violence and disease. The werewolf represented humanity's animal nature, the beast within that civilization tried to suppress. Centaurs, half-human, half-horse warriors, dominated Greek mythology. The most famous centaur, Chiron, trained heroes like Achilles and Hercules, but most centaurs were depicted as drunk, violent, and lustful, representing barbarism versus civilization. The myth probably originated when Greeks first encountered nomadic horse riders from the Eurasian steppes. Imagine never seeing someone ride a horse before. From a distance, horse and rider would appear as one creature. The Scythians and Mongols were phenomenal horsemen whose cavalry tactics seemed superhuman to infantry-based civilizations. Centaurs embodied the fear of the foreign, the wild, and the untamed frontier. They appeared in Renaissance art as symbols of humanity's dual nature, rational mind versus animal instinct. The Chimera was a fire-breathing hybrid with a lion's head, goat's body, and serpent's tail. Bellerophon killed it while riding Pegasus, according to Greek myth. The word chimera now means any impossible hybrid, used in genetics and fantasy equally. The original chimera might represent a volcanic region in ancient Lycia, where natural gas vents created eternal flames on a mountainside. Local fauna, lions, goats, and snakes, combined with geological phenomena, created the perfect mythological storm. The chimera symbolized chaos, nature's fury, and the impossible made flesh. It appeared in medieval bestiaries as a warning against the unnatural and unholy. Vampires aren't just Dracula and Twilight, they're ancient. Every culture has blood-drinking undead legends. The Romanian Strigoi, the Chinese Yangshi, the Filipino Aswang all predate Bram Stoker by centuries. Vampire panic swept through Eastern Europe in the 1700s, with bodies exhumed and staked through the heart. The explanation? Premature burial and misunderstood decomposition. Bodies bloat with gas, causing them to appear well-fed. Blood pools in the mouth, making it look like they'd been feeding. Fingernails appeared to grow as skin receded. Buried in comas would wake and scratch at coffin lids, explaining the dirt under vampire fingernails.
Tuberculosis, which caused families to die one by one, seemed like the dead were draining life from the living. Vampires represented disease, death, and the terrifying possibility that death wasn't final. The Thunderbird from Native American mythology was a giant bird whose wings created thunder and whose eyes flashed lightning. Pacific Northwest tribes carved Thunderbird totems as protectors against evil spirits. Some cryptozoologists believe Thunderbirds were surviving teratorns, massive prehistoric birds with 20-foot wingspans that went extinct around 10,000 years ago. If small populations survived into the historical period, encounters would absolutely create Thunderbird legends. Sightings continue today, with reports of impossibly large birds in remote areas. The Thunderbird represented divine power, natural forces beyond human control, and the connection between earth and sky. Pegasus, the winged horse born from Medusa's blood, carried heroes and inspired poets. But winged horses appear in multiple mythologies independently. The Buraq carried Muhammad to heaven in Islamic tradition. Persian myths featured flying horses centuries before Greece. Why? Horses represented wealth, power, and mobility. Wings represented freedom, divinity, and transcendence. Combining them created the ultimate symbol of limitless potential. Pegasus was eventually transformed into a constellation, literally immortalized in the stars.
The image of a winged horse continues to represent aspiration, the desire to break earthly bonds and achieve the impossible. The Minotaur, trapped in the Cretan labyrinth, was half man, half bull, born from a curse. King Minos demanded 7 youths and 7 maidens as tribute to feed the beast until Theseus killed it. This myth might preserve memories of Minoan bull worship and the palace at Knossos, whose complex layout resembled a labyrinth. Bull leaping was a real Minoan sport, where athletes vaulted over charging bulls. Foreign visitors witnessing these rituals, not understanding the culture, might have created stories about bull monsters. The Minotaur represented the dark side of power. What happens when rulers become monstrous through cruelty and isolation? It's a warning about the corrupting nature of absolute authority. Banshees from Irish folklore are female spirits whose wailing predicts death. Families would hear the keening cry at night, and someone would die within days. The banshee wasn't evil, just a messenger of fate. The myth probably originated from professional mourners called keeners who wailed at funerals, combined with the barn owl's scream, which sounds unnervingly human. In a culture without scientific death prediction, the banshee provided explanation and comfort, a supernatural warning system that meant death wasn't completely random. The banshee represented fate, the inevitability of death, and the thin veil between worlds. Cyclops, one-eyed giants who forged Zeus's thunderbolts, appeared in Homer's Odyssey. Odysseus escaped the Cyclops Polyphemus by blinding his single eye. But why one eye? Elephant skulls have a large nasal cavity in the center that resembles a single eye socket. Ancient Greeks finding mammoth or elephant skulls on Mediterranean islands would absolutely interpret them as giant human skulls with one eye. The Cyclops myth demonstrates how paleontology creates mythology when science doesn't exist yet. The Hydra was a serpent with multiple heads that regrew 2 for every one cut off. Hercules defeated it by cauterizing the stumps. The Hydra represented problems that multiply when handled incorrectly, challenges that require intelligence over brute force. The myth might originate from actual multi-headed snake mutations or the branching nature of certain aggressive plant species that spread when cut. The Hydra became a metaphor for any seemingly insurmountable problem, used today in business and psychology. Sphinxes asked riddles and devoured those who answered wrong. The Egyptian Sphinx had a lion's body and human head, representing pharaonic power. The Greek Sphinx added wings and specifically targeted Thebes until Oedipus solved its riddle. What walks on 4 legs in morning, 2 at noon, 3 at evening? Answer: humanity. The Sphinx represented wisdom, mystery, and the guardian role. It stood at boundaries between civilization and chaos, testing worthiness through intelligence rather than strength. Sphinxes appeared across cultures, from Egypt to Greece to South Asia, always as enigmatic gatekeepers. The Leviathan from Hebrew texts was a massive sea serpent representing chaos and God's power over nature. Job 41 describes it in terrifying detail, with scales like shields, teeth like swords, and breath that kindles coals. It's likely based on whales or crocodiles, exaggerated to mythic proportions. The Leviathan symbolized forces beyond human control, the untamable aspects of creation. It appears in medieval maps as "Here be dragons," marking unknown, dangerous waters. And finally, the roc, a bird from Arabian Nights so large it could carry elephants in its talons. Sinbad the sailor encountered one and barely escaped. Marco Polo reported that the Great Khan had roc feathers, each quill requiring 2 men to carry. These legends might preserve memories of the elephant bird from Madagascar, which stood 10 feet tall and laid eggs larger than any known bird. When these creatures went extinct around 1000 AD, their massive eggshells and bones created legends that grew with each retelling. So there you have it, 20 mythical creatures explained, and every single one has roots in reality, whether that's fossils, diseases, misidentified animals, or psychological needs for explanation. These weren't just stories, they were humanity's first attempts at science, trying to make sense of a world full of wonders and terrors. And honestly, the real stories behind the myths are often more fascinating than the fantasies themselves. If you want part 2 covering 20 more creatures, let me know in the comments which ones I should include next, and make sure you're subscribed, because this series is just getting started.